Y'all, we are in for a real treat today. I have got Coach Joe Kennedy joining me today. There is a movie coming out later this week, actually, about his life. I can't wait to tell you about that. But I'm just eager for you to meet him and hear his story because I know that you're going to be challenged and just encouraged to hear how God has worked through him. So, Coach Joe, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. You guys are so awesome.
Well, you are welcome. I am really thrilled. I remember reading about your story years ago, and then kind of following along. I love the title of the movie, Average Joe, because that's really how it felt. Just an average guy doing what God had called him to do, which wasn't like full time Christian. You were literally right there in the trenches in a high school, and God used you. Give us a little bit about how God worked through that kind of got you to this point.
Yeah, well, God, has an incredible sense of humor. And I was actually an atheist until I got out of the Marine Corps when I got married to my wife. So up to
Wow.
that point, I was a heathen. I lived for the world and lived with everything the world had to offer. And I thought I had a great life. It wasn't until I got married and my wife was a good Christian girl and we were not evenly yoked. It was tough. We both went through a lot of a learning curve trying to make insta family. She had a couple kids, I had a kid, so everything was just extra tough on us. And I was failing miserably. I already screwed up two other marriages, and I really wanted this one to work. She was my first love. I met her when we were 9, and I proposed to her the first day that I met her and I want her to be my last love, and I didn't know how to do that. I was failing miserably, and I finally started going to church with her, and next thing I know, I'm throwing myself on the altar and giving myself to submitting everything to the Lord. And as soon as she saw me submitting, everything just absolutely changed for us. All her barriers came down, and where yeah, I think it's somewhere in the Bible where it says two become one. I fully understood that for the first time that God made us just one unit under His umbrella.
That is such an encouraging testimony. Actually, David was not my husband. David was not a believer when we met either, and the Lord brought him to drew him to Christ right before we started dating, and just to get to see the way that God was growing him. I had grown up in a Christian family. I had been growing in the Lord, but to be able to see through his eyes as he learned everything, as he figured out his theology and what he believed was so exciting for me as a believer too. It was like I was learning it all over again. And I imagine that as I thought about that as you described how Denise just saw everything differently, I imagine that God worked in her life immensely as he was growing you, and just reminding her of the things that she had known and believed for a long time.
Yeah, and to put a little bit more context into it, she was abused when she was a kid, went through some horrific things, and when she was married for I don't know 10, 12 years to a very abusive husband, and she tried to get away from him numerous times, going to women's shelters and whatnot, and just
Wow.
trying to escape. So when we got together, she had a lot of barriers and a lot of defenses up, and she wasn't going to let those down. She didn't want to be hurt again. And I didn't know how to break through those. And it was just so from my perspective, and just to see God open her eyes to what real love and what a marriage and a relationship is supposed to look like, it was just it was perfect. I have no words. It was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I thank God every day for it.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And your testimony is includes a really difficult background as well. I know that you grew up as kind of as I was looking into your life a little bit more and watching the movie and stuff. You grew up in foster care. You bounced around a little bit. I think that your story is so amazing as you see how God takes things that we may consider broken and he redeems and makes them whole, and he uses them because God only puts in your hands what he will use if you're able to be used. And so I appreciate your authenticity in sharing all of those details of your story.
Yeah, I didn't know what to share with everybody, and it seemed because when you're going through all the storms, you don't feel like you're worthy of anything. When I was a kid, I was so angry. I had so much rage in me, and I didn't understand from being even from being an unwanted pregnancy, and my mom giving me up for adoption. Thank God she didn't abort me, but she put me up for
Mm.
adoption. I There was a lot of things that in my past that I didn't understand why God put me through those, because and probably why I was atheist for so long, because how can you believe in a God when you're living through all of
Yeah.
these things and you see the horrible parts of the world?
Mm. Wow. Well, how did so you noted that you came to know the Lord after you got married. Actually, I assume going to church with her, hearing was that the first time that you had heard of God's love for you? Did you grow up hearing it, or was this kind of a new revelation as you were getting older and really working on your marriage with Denise?
That's a beauty of God, that and the way that he puts these puzzle pieces together. I grew up in a Catholic church.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it just underscores the truth that some plant, some water, and it's God that gives the increase. And we may never know the seeds that we plant, how God actually brings them into bloom at some point. But it's incumbent upon us to be faithful with the opportunities that we have. And I'm so grateful that so many were in your life through the years. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Just it's amazing to see God's hand at work. Tell me, you have there's a movie coming out, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that's about your life. Why? Can you tell us a little bit of the story that led to this average Joe having a movie about his life? Mm, mm, hmm. Yeah. You know, but your story was so compelling. I remember actually this happened not long after my youngest child was born. I remember reading about it in the news. Just the first of all, as a believer, it was very personal because the stand that you were taking, I would like to think that all of us would take, and yet I know full well, not that's not true. For those, though, who may not be familiar with your story, can you tell us a little bit about what started all of this that led you down a path that you would have never imagined? And you alluded to a second ago, it started with a 30-second prayer. What do you mean by that? Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Hmm. Uh, hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And you actually lost your job over all of this, as I recall, and then ended up taking your fight through the court system. Is that kind of how it all played out? Wow.
We would be able to work this out as adults because these people are my friends.
Right.
The school district are all friends of ours. And I thought it would be fine until the lawyers gave me a no contact order with the school, and I knew I needed help. And First Liberty Institute came alongside, and I didn't know it was going to take 7 losses in a row and going to the Supreme Court twice just to have them answer, is it legal for somebody to pray after a football game? So that's what the bottom line was, is that the Supreme Court ruled that showing your faith in public is very much American, and the Constitution doubly protects that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it was just an amazing story. And the fact that you had the perseverance to stick through that for 8 years, like you said, is just amazing. I, you get a little insight into how that impacted your personal life through the movie. But I know that that was really, really, really difficult on that marriage that had been saved and that God had so beautifully intervened. What did you and your wife learn about each other and about trusting in God through that time?
Well, I learned what patience was because I had to
Yeah.
wait, and there was nothing I could do. It was waiting, and I was waiting for my wife to understand, the court systems to understand, the school, our community, and the only thing I could do was just press into God and just trust Him. Um, you really need to talk to Denise about this because she's got a whole different perspective on it. And her testimony, I think, is just so incredible because I got to see God working on her from her not understanding anything into where the scales fell off of her eyes and she was instantly understood that God was working in both of our lives. And
Mm.
how he healed everything and put the pieces together that seemed so fragmented and so broken. So God was just an amazing part of it to see both of the growth between both of us. She grew up in the church, and to see her grow like this was just, to me, incredible.
Wow. That's so exciting, and it's so encouraging for many who may be listening in who have their own struggles and stresses in their marriage, and they're wondering if they are going to reach the breaking point. Just to hear testimony of how God works through these difficult times and how He grows you and how He's faithful and He reminds you, and all of those things is just a great encouragement. I want to give you time to talk about the movie specifically because we're about out of time. So my first question is, how did this even come to be? How does someone approach? I mean, was this your idea to do the movie? Did they come to you about the movie? How did this all happen?
Yeah, they came to me. Somebody heard my testimony when this first started about 10 years ago now. I can't believe time just flies. But it was right at the beginning. I gave my testimony of my life and what was happening. It was right at the beginning of the court case. And a guy was inspired. He said, "Wow, this is a story that needs to be told." So somebody spoke into somebody's life, and the guys Troy Duhan and Bob Katz, they were the ones that created God's Not Dead and the Blind. And I thought they were crazy. I was like, maybe these guys aren't on the up and up. You never know because when somebody says we're going to make a movie on your life, it's you can't wrap your brain around that. So they saw
Yeah.
this years and years ago, and then we dealt with COVID, obviously, which shut down the entire movie industry. And I never thought it was going to be resurrected from that, but God knew what the timing was, and He waited until all this time that it was just absolutely His perfect timing to make it all fall into place, to get the actors Eric Close, Amy Acker, and the director Harold Trunk to just put all those pieces together beautifully and smoothly. As soon as he pulled the trigger on it, everything just went perfectly. So he knew what he was doing. We just needed to listen and be obedient to his word.
Yeah, that God is just so good, and He works in ways that we would have never ever imagined. I've always wondered though, and I never get to talk to people who there's a movie made after them. So I got to ask you now. I've got you here. They've made this movie after your life. Do you feel like they did a good job of actually telling your story? Are you, you always wonder, is it so sensationalized? How does this actually stick with your story for those who are going to see it and now feel like they know you?
Yeah, I was so blessed, and I was worried about that. We didn't, when you sign your life rights away and somebody's making a movie,
Mm,
it could be anything, and we were really terrified that they were going to make it sensationalized and make it really Hollywood. But when we met with the director and the actors on the very first day of the movie, when we were on set, they took us off to the side. We all prayed, and they all looked at their prayer was, "Let us do God justice and your story
mm,
justice." And they were so good with that. We got to be very involved. Stephanie Katz, who wrote this screenplay, also wrote was my ghostwriter for my book. So she already knew our family
Okay.
for years, and they were so perfect with it. And they actually developed Denise's character so much more when they started hearing her testimony. So they were so good with it, and they, of course, they change a couple things here and there, but I would say
Sure.
90% of it is straight on. And they actually had to, oh, I don't know, uh, take some of it away because some of it was, living the life that I did. You can't show that to people. So
Yeah.
they took
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
out of it, but it was very, very good and very close. I'm impressed.
Well, I am so grateful that you allowed your story to be told. I think that a lot of people are going to be encouraged and challenged and just really moved as they go see it. So, for all of you who are listening in, I challenge you, go make the time to go see Average Joe in theaters. It'll be here for a limited time right now. I'm going to leave you all the links to find out more about it. But Joe, I know you've got another interview to get to. Where can they find more about your story and engage with you in particular?
They could go to my website. Of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, all the social medias, but you could go to uh, coachjoekennedy.com, and that's my website. And there's a place that you could actually just email me. People could just reach out at any time on social media and find me also.
Well, that is great. And we will leave all of those links to his social and his website and everything so that you can get to know Coach Joe a little bit more. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It has been such a joy to hear your story, and I'm excited for everyone to see the film.
Awesome. This was great. Thank you so much. I'm all inspired and ready for the rest of the day now.
Yay, that's great. Well, to the rest of you all, thank you for hanging out with us. I challenge you, like I said, go see this movie. I think that you're going to be encouraged to see that there is no situation that is so broken, no person, no marriage, no nothing. God is above all of that. He is powerful, He is good, and He delights to work through people who are willing to be used. And so go see this movie. You'll be glad you did. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon. All right. I was trying not to get you, but it's 1 o'clock now. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I
it's
would
12 o'clock.
love
We're good. You are fine. I'm